Welcome to the Ghostly Gallery podcast, a place where we explore the world of horror and mystery in film, television, books, and popular culture. Well, greetings, everybody. Welcome to another show. My name is Bruce Markison. As always, I'm joined by co-host and producer Tracy Asteria. Tracy, how are you?
I'm doing really good, Bruce. How's everything going with you?
Pretty good. One thing I want to say, as we're recording, we actually are celebrating. Well, we're not celebrating, but a very famous celebrity is celebrating his 94th birthday today. And that is William Shatner,
Mm-hmm.
94. Of course, best known for his iconic portrayal of Captain Kirk on Star Trek, both TV and films, but also made some horror films during his career. The Devil's Reign, pretty wild movie from the mid-1970s, Kingdom of the Spider, did a couple of others as well. William Shatner, 94, still active. He's out there on Twitter, social media. I think he might still be doing an occasional film and TV appearances. Pretty amazing what he's accomplishing. He's accomplishing more at 94 than most of us accomplished at 24, probably.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah, I recognized it was his birthday today, and when they said he was 94, I kind of had to stop. I think I was just gobsmacked that William Shatner is 94. Like, where did the time go? He doesn't look 94. He doesn't act 94. He's
No.
more like, a really healthy, maybe 74.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, it's incredible how different people age. Some people at 94, they're really struggling with their health.
Mhm.
They're retired, long retired, but he's one of those people that just keeps going on and on. In addition to some of the credits I mentioned before, he also starred in two iconic episodes of the original Twilight Zone. Nightmare at 20,000 Feet is arguably the greatest episode in Twilight Zone history. So he's had an incredible run. I think really kind of entered the public consciousness at first in the 1960s, but his career actually goes further back than that. So you're talking about, someone who spans so many decades, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, all the way to the current day. And that's pretty rare to really find in any industry, certainly in an industry like Hollywood. So certainly worth mentioning, celebrating William Shatner and his 94th birthday. Well, Tracy, on this week's show, we are going to be discussing two films. We, as in you and me, we're going to talk about one new movie, just came out in 2025. It'll be available for streaming shortly. And the other one is a film that came out 20 years ago. First up is the wild new movie, The Monkey, directed by Osgood Perkins. It's been generating some attention, some buzz. We'll get into that movie. And then during the second half of the program, we'll be talking about a film that I really like. I think it's an underrated movie. It's the remake of House of Wax. It came out 20 years ago, April of 2005. Yeah, that's the movie that starred Paris Hilton, although she was not anywhere close to being the main character. But Jared Padalecki is in it. Alicia Cuthbert is in it as well. They do a pretty good job in that film as the lead role. Chad Michael Murray is another key player. So we'll get into House of Wax, a film from 2005, during our second half of tonight's show. So we will begin now, Tracy, with the new movie, The Monkey, a 2025 release. And we're going to start by asking you to give us a summary, give us the storyline to this very interesting and rather crazy film.
I think you said it right there, Bruce. Interesting and crazy film. So The Monkey, it's a 2025 American dark comedy horror film, and it was written by Osgood Perkins, which, he's phenomenal. And this film was based on a Stephen King 1980 short story that was originally published in a magazine called The Gallery Magazine. And it was later published in a collection of Stephen King's works called The Skeleton Crew, which was published in, I believe, 1985. So this film follows twin brothers, Hal and Bill. They were just kids at the time, and they discover their father's vintage toy monkey in the attic. So it's an old brass wind up organ grinder monkey, the kind with the giant unblinking eyes, the tiny little drumsticks that crash down. And you wind up this toy with a key, kind of like a skeleton key type of thing. And at first, it seems like this is a really harmless little antique, but soon something sinister becomes very apparent. Every time this monkey plays this eerie tune and starts banging on that spooky little drum, someone they know dies in a horrific and unimaginable way. It's very
Yeah.
wonky. And at first, these deaths, they seem like tragic accidents. But as the pattern continues, the boys realize they're trapped in like this crazy cycle of horror. They decide to try and destroy this cursed object through multiple means. They chop it up, fire, all kinds of wacky things. And they thought they were successful. They thought they destroyed this monkey and it was never to be seen again.
Mhm.
However, you fast forward that 25 years, life moves on. Hal, who I classify as the good brother, he's now a father at this point, and his brother Bill, who is the bad brother, um, he's been absent for many, many years. And the twins barely speak to each other as Hal tries to forget about his past and tries to keep his cursed childhood away from those he cares about, especially his son, Petey. We later learn that Bill, the troubled brother, has spent the last 25 years completely obsessed, not only trying to find this wacky little monkey again, but his own personal desire to wreak havoc. And this guy's revenge is super strong. So that's just like a little snapshot of what this movie is about. I don't want to give like a lot away because it takes so many twists and turns. But for me, the opening scene sets the tone for this hour and a half long journey.
Mhm.
I thought it was intense, graphic, and quite frankly, jaw dropping. So I will kind of leave it at there. What did you think of this movie, Bruce?
Well, Tracy, right from the start, I got a bad impression. I didn't really care for the almost frivolous reactions to death.
Mhm.
So, without giving out too much of the story, there's an early death. It's like probably 10 minutes, maybe not even into the film. A character named Annie Wilkes. That's obviously a reference to the character played by Kathy Bates in the movie Misery. That's also a Stephen King adaptation. So that character, she's the babysitter for these two young brothers. She's killed in this crazy freak accident in an Asian restaurant. And then they have this funeral where this young priest gets up and speaks and makes the most ridiculous, tasteless comments. He's trying to, I guess, find some levity in this horrible accidental death of a young person.
Mhm.
Not funny at all, and somewhat representative of some of the other characters and their treatment of death, their reaction to death. I just found that really disturbing right off the bat. And I didn't find this priest's comments at the funeral, this eulogy, maybe the worst eulogy ever delivered in the history of mankind. I didn't find it funny or insightful or helpful in any way. And then you've got the mother of the two young boys. And after the babysitter is killed in this freak accident, she sits down with them and basically gives her a philosophy of life. And it's the most depressing view you could possibly have. She talks about everybody's going to die. A lot of people are going to die in horrible ways. There's nothing you can do about it. And that's it. I mean, talk about the worst possible advice that you could get from a parent, mother or father. It's depressing. It's not helpful. It's just it offers no inspiration at all. So I really found that kind of difficult. And I guess maybe they're trying to be funny. It just didn't strike me as very funny. It wasn't the kind of thing that drew a lot of laughs. So
Mhm.
I knew right away I was going to have some problems with this movie unless that attitude changes. And it really didn't change all that much. So, really, a frivolous reaction to death that always upsets me in films.
Mhm.
It should mean something. It shouldn't be, passed off as, oh, everybody dies. What's the big deal? To me, that's a loser's attitude. So, that's one thing. The other thing is, except for Hal, whom I think you accurately categorize as the good brother. It's not great,
Mhm.
but he's a good brother. Certainly a lot better than his brother Bill, who is the personification of evil in my mind. But other than Hal, all these characters are completely unlikable. And while, you hate to see them come to tragic ends, especially in the horrible ways that they do, you don't have much sympathy or as much sympathy as you would have for likable characters. It doesn't hit you emotionally in the same way. Hal was the only character that I really found myself rooting for at all. I thought most of the characters in this film, Bill, the mother, the stepfather to Hal's son Pete, we see that after the 20-year advancement that you mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
most of them come across as caricatures, disreputable people, people that I wouldn't want to spend any time with, just not likable characters at all. Hal, and I know you're going to talk about the main characters who played them in a moment. Hal is the only one that I think is something other than a caricature.
Mhm.
He's not perfect, but he's got pretty good intentions most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. And he's a guy that you do find yourself rooting for at least a little bit. The others, hard to really root for any of them. So that was one of the problems I had with this movie. That unlikable factor, the treatment of death, it just I don't know, it just didn't work for me.
Oh, I can relate to that. Um, uh, some of the scenes in this film, Bruce, I don't even know what to say.
Yeah.
I think I was kind of speechless, and, when I watched it, I was just kind of like, I wasn't really sure kind of where this movie was going or, what exactly it
Mhm.
was I was watching
Yeah.
at different times, right? Oh my gosh. But talking about the characters, Hal and Bill, they're played by the same guy, and the actor's name is Theo James. And Theo actually hails from the UK, and he's really
Mm.
well known in the movie series Divergent, which starred Kate
Mm.
Winslet. Um, he also plays in the series White Lotus, and he's got tons of other film credits and actually video game credits too. So, in this dual role, I think he did really well. He
Mhm.
showcased how talented he is playing both the good and the bad brother. It was like watching two different characters and two different people on the screen. He brought raw emotion to both roles, actually. And, he carried the childhood trauma of both of the characters. And quite honestly, like like you mentioned, nothing seemed to bother him at all. It didn't matter what was going on around him, like, all hell was breaking loose, and he was just kind of, like, steady Eddie, straight and narrow, like, nothing swayed him at all. Um, Exploding bodies and just being covered in blood, like, that was just a normal family thing for him. So, it truly was like that mentality. Nothing bothered these characters. Then you have, like, a young Colin O'Brien who played Hal's son, Petey. He has a few acting credits that date back to 2022, and I think he added, like, genuine comedy to this dark horror. He was kind of wisecracking, typical teenager, and reminded me a lot of my kids, like my own
Mm.
kids who are teenage boys. Um, Tatiana Maslany, I think that's how you say her name. She played Bill and Hal's mom, and she's a Canadian actress with multiple credits in film and TV. And although her role was kind of like minimal in flashbacks, her character was very pivotal to this storyline. And it was like her untimely death that drove Bill to the depths of his obsession with this monkey. And something really cool, Osgood Perkins played a cameo in this role. I've never seen him before. Like, I didn't know what he looked like, and it wasn't until the credits rolled, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that was Osgood Perkins." He
Hmm.
played Uncle Chip. And
Yeah.
when you watch the film, Uncle Chip, met a very gruesome death, but it was very unique. So, I'll just leave it at that. And there were a couple
Yeah.
of other characters, like Sarah Levy, she played Aunt Ida, and she's actually Eugene Levy's daughter, the sister of Dan Levy, both of Schitt's Creek fame. And I honestly didn't recognize
Hmm.
her. She was kind of like really well aged in this movie, I think.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned, I guess the husband of Hal's ex-wife, that was Elijah Wood.
I had
And,
no idea.
me
No idea that
neither.
was
Thank
him.
you. It wasn't until I was, like, looking at the credits, and I was like, I didn't recognize him. I mean, this guy has had really big roles, but it didn't even dawn on me that is who was playing this character. He was just, like, quirky and weird, and he was only in it for a couple of moments. And there was another lady, and she was only on screen just for a few minutes, but she's really worth noting. Her name was Janet Kidder, and she played Thrasher's mom. So Thrasher is the boy who actually manages to find this monkey. But
Mhm.
Janet Kidder is the niece of the infamous Margot Kidder, which I found fascinating. I had no idea. So there was a lot of really good cast members that came together for this um, interesting film.
Yeah.
So
I gotta ask you one thing. You just referred to Margot Kidder as infamous.
infamous, yeah.
Yeah. Famous or infamous?
Famous.
Why infamous?
She's my Lois Lane. Like, to me, she is Lois Lane. She'll always be Lois Lane. She's had so many other roles, but she's just such an icon in that film.
Oh, so you mean in a good way then?
Oh, in a good way, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I thought you meant in a I know she had some personal problems, the drug and alcohol addiction, things like that. I thought you were referring to her in kind of a not a derogatory, well, sort of a derogatory way, but you didn't mean that.
No,
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know about that relationship between Janet Kidder and Margot Kidder. Certainly, though, when you see the name Kidder, Margot is one of the names that would come to mind.
absolutely.
Going back to something you said about the character of Bill,
Mhm.
most of the time when there are deaths resulting from the monkey, after the monkey is drummed away and has the supernatural power to create these crazy accidents, most of the time, Bill, his reaction is almost like, oh, too bad, let's move on. He doesn't seem too upset,
No.
which tells you a little bit or a lot about his character. The only time he really cares is when he walks into the kitchen. I guess his mother was having a stroke or an aneurysm. She
Mm,
ends up dying. That's early in the film. That's the only death that somehow affects him.
yes.
Other than that, he doesn't show much empathy for anybody. He's pretty much reprehensible. He bullies his poor brother Hal at every turn. He arranges for his friends in school, to throw bananas at him and just do vile things. I mean, could you imagine having a brother like this, be it a twin brother or an older brother? I mean, what a lack of a role model, what a lack of an example when your sibling treats you in such a way. I think the other character, Hal, he didn't always know how to react to the deaths that were happening and to the bad things that were sometimes happening to him because of his brother. I think he was upset by them, but he didn't always know how to kind of portray that, to convey that. And I think that was something that he struggled with even as an adult in this film. Now, you mentioned this character, this actor, Theo James, whom I don't know a lot about. I've seen him in other movies. He's quite good. I think he does a very good job in both roles, especially in the more complicated, realistic character of Hal, because he doesn't play that as a caricature. He plays it as really a three-dimensional person. So I do think he was really, really good.
Mhm.
I also think the last half hour of the film saved it a little bit for me. Because in the last half hour, they get away from the lame efforts or lame attempts at comedy, and they're really trying to make it a more serious movie. The brothers are being pitted against each other. There's an effort on the part of Hal and his son Pete to, somehow take the monkey away from Bill to try to stop Bill and his evil plan. So I thought the last half hour was pretty good. The very ending, though, with the school bus was ridiculous. I mean, I don't know what that almost had like a Beetlejuice feel to it. I mean, it again, it was another attempt at comedy. I thought it was very lame. I don't think it didn't fit in with the last half hour of the movie at all. So this was a movie where the director, and he's talented. I mean, this is the same guy who did Longlegs, which we both loved, and
That's
that's a
right.
great creative thriller film. That's a really, really good movie. I love it. But in this one, he just kind of kept stepping on his foot. And I just don't think this was his bag, doing a dark comedy slash type horror.
Mhm.
Now, I've got some questions, not necessarily for you, but just sort of in general, that I don't think the director or the scriptwriter answered. And of course, Perkins wrote this, and I guess King also contributed too.
Mhm.
So, why did Bill keep cranking up the monkey so that it could continue to kill innocent people when he has no idea if the monkey is going to target the person he wants to be killed, which is his brother Hal? Why didn't he just do it himself? I mean, he's such a reprehensible character to begin with. I mean, he seems to me that he would have had the capability of doing the murder on his own. Why is he taking a chance with the monkey who's just almost killing random people that either he knows or happen to be in the area, in the neighborhood? That just seemed like a scattershot approach. That didn't make a lot of sense. And then the other question that I had, Tracy, is how exactly did this monkey acquire its supernatural powers? Once they turn the key, crank it up, it starts drumming away furiously, and then almost within a matter of seconds, someone dies in horrific fashion. Where's the origin story here? Where does this come from? Now, there was an early scene that was set back considerably in time, but still doesn't really tell us exactly how did this monkey acquire these powers. I would have liked to have known. I think the movie
Mhm.
should have explored that at some point. What'd you think of that?
Oh, absolutely. So that was kind of like the very opening scene of this movie. Like it just jumps right into it, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't give you any background. You know, Hal and Bill's dad is just trying to give away this monkey, right? But
Hmm.
the backstory would have been kind of, like, good to know, like, pick it up a few minutes before that scene just to say, "Oh my gosh, like, this is cursed, and this is how it was," just something. Um, l Not to give it away, but, like, at the end, there was, like, maybe a glimmer maybe to say that maybe it was, like, just, like, evil, like, I don't know, because there was, like, this dark image that kind of, like, trotted by on a horse, and it was kind of, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
reminiscent like, there was definitely something supernatural, but I think they could have explored it just for a few minutes, Um,
Hmm.
I never read Stephen King's, like, short story. I think I breezed through it, but I don't recall it. It's only 34 pages or something. It's not long, but
Hmm.
I don't know if his story dug a little deeper into it. So now I have to go find the story and
Yeah.
actually read it because I am curious, like, what's the deal with this monkey? Right?
Yeah.
Like, I just don't
We know
know.
it's based, we know the movie is based on the King short story. I'd be
Mhm.
curious to know, when Osgood Perkins was sitting down to do the screenplay, was King working with him? Was he, there by his side, or were they communicating? Was King giving him suggestions? I'm not really sure how that dynamic works. I guess it varies from film to film.
Mhm.
King, though, as you say, liked the movie and felt it was a good adaptation.
Yeah.
So maybe he did give Perkins some suggestions. Maybe he was sort of side by side with him when he was writing the script.
Yeah.
I don't think the script was that great, to be honest. I think it could have been a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It
think it
it
was lacking in some ways.
yeah. It
So
was
let's give this a ranking, 1 to 5 stars. One, of course, being at the bottom, five being the absolute top. Where do you rate The Monkey?
Oh, Bruce, I wanted to love this so much, and I know there's so many mixed reviews on this. I only gave it 2.5 stars, and I think that's a little bit generous. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. But I just really wasn't crazy about, like, the gruesome death scenes that were, all throughout this film. I was really from Osgood Perkins, I was expecting more horror and not really any humor. So that's kinda where I fall, which is kind of sad. But anyway, yeah,
All
two and a
right,
half generous stars.
2.5 stars. Before
Mhm.
I give you my final thoughts and my ranking of the film, I want to ask you this. Do you think the comedy was good, or did it completely miss the mark?
I thought it missed the mark, honestly. It's
Yeah.
I Stephen King is horror. Osgood Perkins is a good, like, I compare him, like, Longlegs was an excellent project. And, that's what I was expecting. I was expecting a really good combination of, my
Hmm.
recollection of Longlegs and just, like, the Stephen King touch. So,
Yeah.
yeah, no humor. Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. And we've talked about this before. When you make an attempt at comedy and you fail, the film is not going to work. It's not
Mhm.
going to be a success. And the same applies to a horror comedy, whether it's, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, or Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which are, they're great movies because they are funny, but they also have real elements of horror and drama in them.
Mhm.
But if you're going to do a horror comedy and the comedy isn't funny, if it falls flat, and I think it fell flat in this movie, this was not funny. This was depressing in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
The movie is not going to be successful. And that's always the chance you take with comedy. If you're going to take an aim at humor, you better hit the mark. If not, forget about it. So that's the first problem. Second, the deaths were way over the top, way excessive. I didn't think they needed to be that violent. There was almost this obsession with decapitations,
Yeah.
which are always hard for me to look at on screen, even though it's obviously being simulated. So I didn't think that was necessary. I don't think that really helped the film. I also thought the movie looked a little bit cheap. I don't think it was atmospheric. I don't think it was nicely photographed. Some horror films, even if they fail in other areas, if the cinematography is good, if it's done in a stylish way, that makes it a little bit more passable, more presentable. I don't think Perkins succeeded here. So I'm going to go even lower than you. I'm going to go 2 stars. And that's only because the last half hour salvaged it a little bit. I would have been even lower if the last half hour had not, gotten things back on the rails a bit. So I'll go 2 stars for The Monkey. Tracy goes 2.5 stars. So those are our thoughts on the new film from Osgood Perkins, The Monkey. We're going to take a short break on the podcast. When we come back, we're going to look back at a film that came out 20 years ago, April of 2005. It's a film that has become somewhat of a cult classic, but in some ways still doesn't really get its full due. It's better than you think. From 2005, House of Wax. We'll talk about that after a short break right here on the Ghostly Gallery. Welcome back to the Ghostly Gallery podcast. We move on to the second film we're discussing on this episode of the program. Bruce Markison and Tracy Asteria still with you, at least for another half hour or so. The film that we're going to be talking about is a film that came out 20 years ago, the remake of House of Wax. So, Tracy, we'll start by talking about the storyline here. And the story centers on a group of teenagers who are traveling to a football game. They actually head out the day before the game and then set up camp in really a woodsy area located quite a distance from the football stadium. In the middle of the night, as they're camped out, a stranger in a pickup truck arrives. Sensing that this stranger is a threat to them, one of the group of friends decides to smash one of his headlights. And that turns out not to be such a good decision. The next morning, when everybody wakes up, they realize that their vehicle's fan belt has been severed, most likely by that same stranger they encountered in the middle of the night. The group then encounters a weird local man named Lester, and he offers to take a couple of the friends in his truck to the nearby town of Ambrose, where they can buy a new fan belt and then get back on the road. Two of the friends, Wade and Carly, and they're played respectively by Jared Padalecki and Alicia Cuthbert, they go with Lester in the truck while the rest of the group tries to go to the game. Now, when Wade and Carly arrive in this very remote town of Ambrose, they discover that it is virtually a ghost town. They do encounter one man that they see, a man named Bo, who offers to sell them a fan belt and then give them a ride back to their car. But first, Bo has to attend a funeral service. So he tells them, you're going to have to wait. They say, okay. While waiting for Bo, Wade and Carly visit this local attraction, Trudy's Wax Museum. Well, Wade and Carly soon discover that the museum is not your standard wax museum. The entire building is made of wax, including the walls and the furniture. But far more disturbing is this. They soon discover that many of the townspeople are made of wax as well, including just about everybody who's attending the funeral in the church. Now, in the meantime, two of the other friends in the group, named Nick and Dalton, they're played by Chad Michael Murray and John Abrahams, decide to make their way to the town of Ambrose to see if they can find Wade and Carly. After they arrive in Ambrose, they soon realize that their friends are in trouble. They discover that Wade is encased in wax in the museum, not good, and that the town is being occupied by not a lot of living people, but the ones that are living are basically homicidal maniacs. Now, House of Wax is ostensibly a remake of the Vincent Price movie that came out in 1953. That was a film that was actually released in 3D. And that film was a remake of 1933's Mystery of the Wax Museum. But this newer movie from 2005, even though it's got the same name, and I guess technically it's a remake, to be more accurate, it's really a reimagining of the 1979 movie called Tourist Trap. And that's a movie that's become a cult classic. Tourist Trap starred the great Chuck Connors as the owner and operator of a remote museum filled with mannequins, really creepy. Here's the storyline of Tourist Trap. You have a group of young adults that are on the road. They run into car trouble, much like the young people in House of Wax. They're forced off the road. They stumble upon this remote backwoods museum that is filled with these mannequins. The museum at first appears to be abandoned, but the group will soon encounter its owner, and that's the very strange Mr. Slauson, played by Chuck Connors. Not only is Slauson dangerous, but he seems to exert a supernatural power over the wide array of mannequins. Unlike Tourist Trap, there really is a supernatural element. There is no supernatural element, I should say, with House of Wax. It's kind of a straight horror film, no science fiction, no supernatural, just strange people, weirdos, killers, a town with a lot of wax in it. But like Tourist Trap, House of Wax has become a cult classic. Didn't do great in its initial box office run, but over time, it has become very popular in terms of, its rentals. It's on streaming. It's a movie that a lot of horror fans have kind of discovered the last couple of decades. So that's an overview of this film, House of Wax 2005. Tracy, let's get your initial thoughts on the movie.
This was actually the first time I saw this movie. It's never actually been on my radar to watch. I'm not a really big fan of, those highly predictable teenage era type films like this one. I typically don't take a chance on them. The story's pretty standard slasher setup, friends stranded in a creepy place, isolated location. They're all hunted down and taken out, kind of like one by one. It was campy and on pace with a lot of other horror films made like at that same time period. Um, I want to say it's probably geared more toward teenagers, like a teenage audience, much younger than me. Modern slasher horror, it's dark, it's gritty, um, leans really heavy on gore. And for me, there was a lot of shock value to certain themes. Um,
Mm-hmm.
just seeing people made into wax figures, although it was like realistic looking, it was really disturbing to watch. It was so weird. Um, it was sometimes brutal to watch the choices those characters made during this film. I kept thinking to myself,
Mm-hmm.
like, why on earth would you go there? Why would you do that? And stop touching those things. Like, why would you get into a truck with that creepy Lester fella who's, you see a scene of him dumping like dead animal carcasses into this pit. And yet these two people go with it. Like, why? Just I don't get it. I know it's a movie, but what are you thinking? Um, just the lack of common sense was evident and predictable, right? But for me, I'm just like more into like creepy, paranormal, something with a great story that can surprise me. Now I didn't see that movie Tourist Trap that you mentioned. I'll have to go watch that one. But I do recall seeing the original House of Wax with Vincent Price a very, very long time ago. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's just kind of like my initial thoughts. Just weird, very weird. And of course, just coming off of watching the movie The Monkey too, right? It was,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
trying to like organize my thoughts on those two.
All right. You obviously have different thoughts on the film than I do. So I'm now going to try to show how you're kind of wrong on this movie. So give
Awesome.
me a chance to present the argument. So I really look at House of Wax from 2005 as a surprisingly decent film. When I first watched it, and it must have been on cable, probably came out a few years after its theatrical release. I didn't expect much. And then I watched it and I thought, I think this is pretty good. It did middling numbers at the box office. It did eventually, through rentals, make back all of its expenses. And I think it did turn a profit. More importantly, at the time, it received mostly negative reviews from critics. But it really has become a favorite with many horror fans, including me, in the last 2 decades. Now, the very famous film critic, Roger Ebert, he gave the film 2 out of 4 stars. And this is what he wrote about the movie. He said, House of Wax is not a good movie, but it is an efficient one and will deliver most of what anyone attending House of Wax could reasonably expect, assuming it would be unreasonable to expect very much. End quote. So it's kind of a backhanded compliment, but generally a panning of the film.
Mm.
I take this kind of criticism with a grain of salt because I remember Roger Ebert when he did his show with Gene Siskel. Neither one of them were huge fans of horror films. They often criticized horror films that I really thought were very good. I mean, one film that they weren't all that high on was Silence of the Lambs, which ended up winning the Academy Award. And that's not to say that House of Wax is Silence of the Lambs, but I do think it's better than what Ebert and other critics say. A lot of other critics at the time also panned the film, so Ebert was not alone in that opinion. One of the reasons I think the film did not get its due back in 2005 was because of one of its stars being Paris Hilton. Now, her name was used as part of a marketing campaign to promote the film. The producers even came up with a slogan, "See Paris Die," as part of the effort to get people to watch the movie. So it's kind of ironic that they used Paris Hilton to promote the film, and then Paris Hilton's presence, I think, results in many of the critics giving it not such good praise. Well, if I look at this honestly and objectively, and I'm not particularly a fan of Paris Hilton, but I think her performance in this movie is really better than most people would think. It's perfectly acceptable. If her name wasn't Paris Hilton, I think most people would not have thought much about it either way. Even if you do think it was a poor performance by Paris Hilton, she has a relatively small role in the film. It's not critical to what goes on, and it really doesn't affect the film all that much. So I'm trying to put the Paris Hilton thing off to the side. Let's just look at this film objectively. And let's look at the three main players, Chad Michael Murray, Alicia Cuthbert, and Jared Padalecki. They all play much larger roles. They're really, I think, the three main stars. And in my mind, they're all quite good in their lead roles. You have Murray, who would go on to play Ted Bundy in a 2021 movie called, I think, Ted Bundy, the Boogeyman. I haven't seen it, but I could see Chad Michael Murray playing that part. And I think he's actually very good in House of Wax. He plays kind of this bad boy who's very quiet at the beginning, but then he ends up becoming a real heroic figure. He leads the fight against the homicidal maniacs in the town of Ambrose. And then you, of course, have Jared Padalecki, who has become a pretty big star. He was about to begin his very long run on the Supernatural series, which would debut just a few months after this film's release. It would start in the fall of 2005. So I think Murray, Cuthbert, Padalecki, I think they all do very fine jobs here in the movie. There's also an intriguing appearance by this character that you love, Lester, played by an actor named Damon Harriman. He's very much an oddball. He does offer to give the kids a lift into Ambrose, even though he's as creepy as they come. And he does happen to be a collector of roadkill. I'm trying to remember, was that his job or was that a hobby? It's got to be his
Oh,
job, right? Can't be a hobby.
I want to say it's his hobby. I think he rather
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Yes, he did seem to get into it.
You
Either way, hobby, job, it's pretty strange to be involved with roadkill in such a way. But
Well,
that
absolutely.
actor, yeah, that
Because
actor,
after
I think
all,
he does a good job playing the role. Yeah.
he does. After all, he said if you get them first thing in the morning, they don't smell as bad. So that was his methodology. I was like, ew.
Yeah. He doesn't look like the most intelligent guy, but hey, at least he's trying to make an argument for collecting the roadkill. So give him credit for that. So those are my thoughts on Murray, Cuthbert, Padalecki, Hilton. I'm curious, Tracy, what did you think of their performances?
I thought they were all okay. You know, Alicia, how do you say her name? Alicia Cuthbert.
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 Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm so used to calling her Kim from 24. So Kim Bauer.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's where I know her from. And, I thought she was really actually really good in this role. Um, Her performance kind of reminded me a lot of the Kim character of 24, and there were times I was
Mm,
expecting Kiefer Sutherland as Jack Bauer to jump out and save the day, right? Because
right.
I I think, like, just given the timing, um, she might have been filming kind of like her scenes in 24 at the same time. So that was just kind of like my feelings on her. She was really good though. Um, Jared again, who played her boyfriend Wade, he was okay. He was a good fit, but the character was just, I don't even know how to say it. He was so hokey, I guess that's a good term. Just blindly going about
Hmm.
exploring, a stranger's house and, touching things. He was just kind of daft and very goofy. But it
Hmm.
worked. Like it truly worked for him. And the guy that played Nick, Chad Michael Murray, um, I did, it was really weird, Bruce, because I didn't clue in at the very beginning that it was Carly's brother. I don't know why I didn't catch that. I let that slip. But, come to find
Mm,
out he's the brother, and he was really, really good. I've never really seen him in anything before that I can recall, but he is really well known for Sullivan's Crossing, that TV series, which is filmed here in Nova Scotia. So, yeah, I'll have to actually check it out. He was not too bad in that film. But, I think the cast was really, really good. Um, the guy that played Bo, I think his name was Brian Van Holt. He was really
hmm.
good. He was actually good. Um, I don't wanna harp on Paris Hilton's performance. I didn't, of course, take her seriously. I have a really hard time with it. Just seeing a movie 20 years old when she was younger takes me back into the time when she was, like, all over media, the spoiled, bratty rich girl, very, very cringeworthy. But, I think that was all for appearances. Her character and her role and her personality all fit with her small performance in this movie. Um, was interesting, and, the
Mm,
way she went out of this movie, was not too bad. So, you know, it
yeah.
it was okay, her performance did not really alter the perception of this film, so I definitely get
Yeah.
what you said in the beginning is it was so minimal and so small, it shouldn't have any bearing on people watching this movie.
Right. Listen, she's not Katharine Hepburn. I think we know that. I think probably Paris Hilton would say that as well. But there's a lot of other actresses that have come and gone that are a lot worse.
Yeah.
I don't think she's really that bad. I think people tend to dwell on her because of her persona. It was probably around this time that she was doing that reality TV show with
Yeah.
Lionel Richie's daughter. I think that
Yes,
was around the same time.
it was, I
And I
believe.
think there's some negative feelings from that. That was kind of at the beginning of the whole reality TV era,
Mhm.
unfortunately. So I think people do give her somewhat of a bad rap. I think she has actually matured since then. She's become involved in various charitable causes. I think she's okay in the film.
Mhm.
Um, it's interesting too when you see a young Jared Padalecki. He's not old now, but you see him just before he moves on to Supernatural, and his character in the movie is a lot different from the ghost hunting, demon hunting character that he played on that long running TV show. We got so used to him as the younger brother there, and then it's kind of interesting to see him just before that, really near the beginning of his acting career, playing kind of a goofball. And I think he's acceptable for what he's given. You always have to remember the actor can only work with what he's given in terms of a script, in terms of the words, and sometimes you're not given much. I think with what he's given, he did fine. But it is kind of interesting to see him, just before he moves on to a successful TV show. It's kind of like seeing Alan Alda who made some early horror movies just before he made MASH. And you
That's
kind of
right.
see where they are as an actor before they really become famous.
No, absolutely. That's a really good point, Bruce, because I mean, an actor gets better with experience too, right? And
Yeah.
Jared, very young. I mean, you go back 20 years, right? So he was really young, early
Yeah.
20s, I would imagine, taking on a role like this. So, yeah,
Chad Michael Murray is a guy that we think of more for his TV roles. You mentioned Sullivan's Crossing, but go back a few years. He was one of the stars of One Tree Hill. I
right.
think he was also in Dawson's Creek.
Hmm.
And early in his career, he was involved in some controversy. He was married to Sophia Bush, who was, I think, his co star in One Tree Hill.
Oh my gosh,
And
you're
their
right.
marriage didn't last very long. She accused him of being, I guess, somewhat violent and abusive. They did end up getting divorced. A lot of people thought that was going to really ruin his career. I think he's probably matured some since then, and he's gone on to pile up some good credits. But he is no more for TV than movies. But I think he's really good as sort of the anti-hero in this film.
Yeah.
I like him here.
Yeah, no, I think he did really good. I was really surprised at his performance, actually.
Another strength of the movie, Tracy, is the practical effects, which were used by the director Jaume Collet-Serra. This was actually his first horror film, and he's made some since then. One of the things that he and his practical effects team decided to do, this is kind of funny, but they used peanut butter to approximate the wax used in creating the wax museum. And I thought it was really effective. I mean, the effort they put in to creating an entire building, allegedly out of wax, but really out of peanut butter. I mean, that's admirable. And I think it looks pretty cool, especially when the place goes up in flames. I thought
Mhm.
that was really well done. Koye Serra insisted that they use practical effects as much as possible, as opposed to, special effects, computerized effects. That's always a good choice, and I think it works here. It's also interesting to know, Tracy, the filming for this, even though it's supposed to be, I think, in Louisiana, the filming was actually done in Australia, and they created an elaborate set to simulate the town of Ambrose. It took about 10 weeks to create that town, and apparently it's based on a real life town that exists in Africa. So they did some research there. They put some real work into this town. And I think the town itself is one of the cool parts of the film. We should mention that this director, Koye Serra, has gone on to do some other horror films. Orphan, which I think you probably, if you've seen it, you probably agree that it's better than House of Wax. It's a critically acclaimed movie. Have you seen Orphan?
I don't remember if I've seen it or not, but it's now on my list to watch.
Yeah, that's the one where she plays someone who is adopted by uh, two parents.
Mhm.
Peter Skarsgård is one of them, and the other is the actress who played Norman Bates's mother in Bates Motel.
Right.
Excellent
Oh,
actress, one of my favorites, and for some reason her name has escaped me. Isn't
Pharma
that awful?
Farm is it
Oh, Vera
Farmiga?
Farmiga. Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yes.
Vera is the mother. Peter Skarsgård is the father. They adopt what they think is a young 11-year-old girl who's like a musical prodigy. Turns out in real life, she's actually 30 and she's a homicidal killer
Mhm.
and creates problems. The adoption doesn't go all that smoothly. It's a really good movie. Anyway, Koye Serra did that movie. He also did The Shallows with Blake Lively, which is a movie about this young woman who is dealing with sharks that have come into very shallow water. You don't normally think of sharks in shallow water, but that's exactly what has happened. That's a good movie too. That's not as well known as Orphan, but it's worth seeing. So I think Koye Serra has shown some real ability. Even if you don't like House of Wax, Orphan and The Shallows are films that he has gone on to make since then. Overall, I look at this movie, House of Wax, creepy characters, unexpected twists, plenty of melting wax, really cool effect. I think it's a fun movie, and I think it deserves more respect. If we look at it as a remake, I actually think it's better than the original with Vincent Price. I don't think that's one of Price's best films. I think it's somewhat overrated. There's 3D in it. It's really hokey. It's not a great story. It's okay, but it's not one of Price's better films. I actually think this remake, if you call it that, is a little bit better, even though it obviously does not have an actor as legendary as Vincent Price. I think it's a fun movie. I think it really is a cult classic. It's gone from being disrespected by critics to being a fun favorite for a lot of horror fans, including me. I go 3 stars for 2005's House of Wax. What's your rating for it?
I thought the atmosphere was creepy once I got past that first half hour or so, past that teeny bopper stuff. I thought the actual kind of kills were pretty grim. Um, and what kept me from just saying, "I absolutely hate this movie," was the end. That
Okay.
whack count was, like, creepy in all of the right ways. It's like you're walking through, like, a miniature gallery. Like, it was really creepy, but it was beautiful. And, the
Yeah.
scene where the house was melting, that was excellent, and it's the scene that makes you wish the rest of the movie lived up to that kind of creativity. It was great camera work, the practical effects. Had no idea about the peanut butter, like, that's crazy. How creative, like, what made them think about that? But now that I
Yeah.
think about it, it kinda makes sense, like, that consistency. But, overall, it really
Mhm.
wasn't too bad, Bruce. Not great, but if you're into, like, mid-2000s horror nostalgia, it's worth a watch. And I only gave it 2.5 stars, and that is especially for the ending. I love that ending. That was, I think, probably one of the coolest effects I've seen in a while.
Okay. So Tracy goes 2.5 stars. I go 3 stars for House of Wax from 2005. Tracy, just a couple more minutes to go. I did want to take a moment to pay tribute to an actor who passed away last week, Wings Hauser, prolific cult film B movie star, died at the age of 77. He was a guy who accumulated about 110 credits in film and TV during a career that actually dated all the way back to the late 1960s, culminated in his final film, 2019, so not too long ago. And his horror credits included such movies as 1984's Mutant, which I just saw about a year ago, is very good, very underrated. Also, The Wind, Pale Blood, a vampire movie, which I just watched last night. Somebody at the Facebook page recommended that to me. That's a good movie. Also did Nightmare at Noon, and he did Tales from the Hood in the mid 1990s. Hauser was particularly adept at playing villains, often of the deranged kind. He could play these wild characters and did it in a really entertaining way. Probably his most memorable role was actually not a horror movie. It was more of an action drama. It's the 1982 cult film called Vice Squad, and he plays the vicious character of Ramrod, who is actually a murderous pimp, and just a thoroughly disgusting character. But it's a character that he kind of plays to perfection. Wingshauser is not what I think we would call an actor of great range. We think of some of the actors who died last year, like a Donald Sutherland. We wouldn't put Hauser in that same category, but he was a guy who played action and genre roles with a lot of energy and a lot of passion. And that helped him build a tremendous following and really made him especially popular as a cult film star. I'm on Twitter. I was amazed by how many people had this outpouring, the sadness to hear of the death of Wings Hauser, how much they liked him. He was extremely popular. Joe Bob Briggs, the great movie reviewer, considered him a friend. Off the screen, Hauser was known for being a really friendly guy, very down to earth. Also, kind of a great story of redemption and turnaround in his career. Back in the mid 1970s, and this was after he had first become an actor, he was struggling. He was homeless. He and his very young daughter, I think she was an infant at the time, they had to live in what was essentially a garage. They did not have a real home to call their own. But he found success as an actor really in the late 70s, throughout the 1980s. That was really the peak of his career. And he regularly appeared in all sorts of movies, made many guest star appearances on TV series. He was, he was even in Murder, She Wrote with Jessica Fletcher. He did roles that sometimes went beyond that action figure character. And he was, often called upon to star in these popular TV series. And usually it's just a guest star, maybe just a few minutes, but he would make an impact. And he was a guy who ended up making a successful career for himself, really turned around his life for himself and for his family. So it's a great story of redemption and a great story of somebody finding success, persevering. So I did want to take a few minutes to mention Wings Hauser, who passed away at the age of 77. Well, Tracy, that'll wrap things up for this week's show. We covered a lot of territory. We talked about the new movie, The Monkey. We talked about the old movie, House of Wax. Talked a little bit about the late Wings Hauser. Thanks for being with us as always.
Oh, thanks, Bruce. It was fun. Interesting movie selections this week, I will say. So thank you.
Yes, we'll have to work on some more for the future. We always like to give you a little bit of new and a little bit of vintage horror as well when we do our movie selections. Our thanks to Tracy. Our thanks to everybody listening and watching. We appreciate the fact that you have joined us in this Museum of the Macabre. And we do hope we'll see you again next time right here in the Ghostly Gallery.